And without taking any more of your time, let's move into the second part of the session, conducted by Rusiru Abhisheak, where he would be basically sharing his knowledge on Dockerize and deploy Node.js applications with Azure Kubernetes Services. Rusiru Aya, over to you.
Thank you, Vijay. So, and again, really thanks to Mr. Kamal Ratnakar to share his experience and knowledge with us on queue-based load leveling with Azure Bus Service. So, actually, it was a great session. I actually learned a lot. So, I hope our audience is also learn something out from it. So this is the second section of the session. So in this session, I'm going to basically give you how you can Dockerize or containerize a Node.js application and deploy it to Azure Kubernetes service. So without moving forward, let me introduce myself. So I'm Rusiru Abhisheak. I'm currently third year software engineering undergraduate at SLIIT, and I'm also work as a associate software engineer at Red Hat Global, and I'm also Microsoft Learn student ambassador. So yeah, that's enough of me. So let's move forward. So yeah. uh, yeah, that's the last slide that I have prepared. So but yeah, let's move on. Okay, in here, like today our goal is to dockerize a Node.js application and deploy it to Azure Kubernetes Service. So like if you like feel that you are new to Docker, like concept like Docker Kubernetes, like if you didn't use those technologies before, so I actually read the entire blog post to you to like go through and learn. So there I actually cover most of the stuff, most of the concept that I'm going to talk today. So like if you feel if you don't have any good knowledge about on those areas, go check that blog post. So I actually today I actually go through this blog post while I'm doing the practical session. So then then actually you will be able to learn a lot through this blog post. So basically today's outline is first I'm going to briefly explain briefly give an introduction to Azure Kubernetes Service and Azure Container Registry. So after that we will see the overview of our use case. So then we after like go through the use case of today's session, I will create a Azure Container Registry. So then we need to build and push the Docker image to Azure Container Registry. So I will do that. So and also we need to create and deploy Azure Kubernetes cluster because at the end we need to deploy our Docker image to that cluster in order to access from the public internet. So then we need to deploy a containerized Node.js application to that K8 cluster. Like K8 means K8 and Kubernetes means similar. Like K8 is the Kubernetes. Sometimes most of the industry people uh, name this Kubernetes as K8. And then we will wrap up the session. So yeah, let move forward. So first, I will explain briefly introduction to like I will give a brief introduction to those two resources that we are going to use today. So in first, we what is this Azure Kubernetes Service? So Azure Kubernetes Service, also known as AKS, is a service that provided by Azure to deploy Kubernetes clusters on cloud environment. So it actually really great place to learn about Kubernetes as well as deployment on Kubernetes. So go check, like you can read it here, and I also link other documents You can actually go read it here. So basically in today's session, what we use Azure Kubernetes Service to create our cluster and to deploy our Dockerized image on that cluster. So at the end, we have a working product that can be accessed through the internet, right? So that's the main purpose that we use Azure Container Service. So then Azure Container Registry, also known as ACR. So this is when we create our Docker images, we need to store it somewhere, because otherwise, if we have our Docker image on our local PC, our Azure Kubernetes service cannot access it, because our application is on the local machine, no? So we need to have we need to actually push our Docker image to somewhere. So actually we in here we use Azure Container Registry. Basically Azure Container Registry is a private like private platform to store our Docker images. So similar to Docker Hub, it's a in Azure Container Registry, it's a private place to push our or store our Docker images, containerized images. So in here in today's session, we actually use Azure Container Registry to push our Dockerized Node.js application, so that Azure Kubernetes Service can access this Azure Container Registry, like our Docker image inside our Azure Container Registry, to deploy it to the Azure Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, that's about Azure Kubernetes Service and Azure Container Registry, right? So then we can move on to the use case of the today's session. So this is what we are going to do today. So basically, as a developer, we develop the Node.js application, right? As the first task, we need to develop it. So then after we developed it, so we need to create a Docker image, container image out of our Node.js application. So then to do that, actually we use a file called Docker file. So in that Docker file, we specify things that need to Dockerize this application, right? Then after we Dockerize this our application, we need to push it to the Azure Container Registry, ACR. So like I said earlier, this Azure Container Registry is the place where we store our Docker images, right? So that's the second task. So then after we create push our image to Azure Container Registry, so we need to create the Azure Kubernetes service in order to use it, because otherwise we cannot use it, no? So then what we need to do is, as the third step, we need to apply the deployment YAML file. So when I get into that point, the deployment YAML file, I'll explain what are the things in that file. Basically just have a rough idea. This YAML file, this deployment YAML file is the is a file that actually tell Kubernetes what to do. Basically based on the information that is in this deployment YAML file, it will create a deployment. After we apply this file, it will create a deployment. So under that deployment, basically we specify how many pods that we need to create. So then when these pods are getting created, so these pods actually pull our Docker image from the ACR. So before we run the deployment YAML file, actually we need to push our Docker image to Azure ACR, so Azure Container Registry. Then only when these pods are getting created, then only the pods actually pull the Docker image from the Azure Container Registry. So then after pods are created, so then we expose these expose our application through a service called load balancer. So basically, this is again another resource that we use to handle the traffic between our nodes. Basically, these pods actually inside the server called node. So in this case, we are only create one pod inside, like one node. Inside that one node, we have our one pod. So this pod actually contain the Docker image, the containerized application, right? So then we will expose our application through a load balancer, so so that public internet can access it. So at the end, our goal is to deploy this our Docker image to Azure Kubernetes cluster, so that like public users can use it through the internet. This is how our use case diagram looks like. So I hope you have some rough idea what we are going to do today. So yeah, let's get started. So while I doing the things, like I'll explain some more information. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, first we need to log into our Azure portal. So before we going further, in order to complete this practical session, you need to have four things on your hand. So basically, first you need to have an Azure account, Azure portal account, and you need to have Docker installed on your computer. So in my blog post, I actually give all the links to these tools, so that you can actually install it so on your computer, right? So for, like I said earlier, we need to have Docker installed on your computer, and we need to have Azure subscription, Azure account. So then after that, we need to have Kubernetes command line tool called kubectl, or also known as kubectl. And I actually put a link to, you can actually go to that link, download and install it on your computer. So, and also we need to have Azure command line tool, because we most of the Azure resource creating are done through the terminal. That's why we need Azure command line tool. But if you prefer going on the graphical user interface way path, that is also fine. So but in this session, I'm going to use command line tool. Yeah, let's get started. So by the way, I actually put this entire project on GitHub under my account. After this session, I actually give the link to my GitHub repository, so that you can also download this entire project. In my blog post also, I actually put a link to my repository. So there you can actually download this entire source code, so you can practice this on your computer. So you don't need to create a new application to run this entire process. So you can download in here, right? Okay. Without further ado, let's get started. I actually said let's get started couple of times, but now it's actually started. Okay, so first we need to log into Azure portal through this command line tool. So in order to log in, you need to have a command called Azure AZ login. So give this command and hit enter. So then it will open your browser, and it will prompt you what is the account that you want to log in. So in here I'm using this one. So here you can see the login successful. So it will validate the credentials in the terminal. So if the credentials are valid, here you can see we are successfully logged in. Okay. Yeah, here you can see if you have multiple subscriptions, it will display it to you. So I only have one subscription, so that subscription is displayed in here. Okay, let's clear the terminal. Then we can move on to the second part. we now successfully logged into Azure portal. So the second task that we need to do is like we need to create a Azure resource group. So actually Mr. Kamal Ratnayake is also explain what is Azure resource group in his session. So basically let me create paste a command. So I'll explain this command for you. So basically we tell Azure to create a resource group called Azure Cloud Streak, right? And we need to specify the location. The location means the region regions that are available on Azure. So Azure, there are so many regions. So in here I'm just use Southeast Asia. So you can use US and also other locations and regions as well, but here I'm using this one, right? So basically you need to give the name. So to give a name to Azure resource group, you can have a tag called dash dash name. So then you can specify the name to your resource group, right? Okay, then I will explain execute this command. I hit enter. So then it will basically create a Azure resource group for us. So here you can see it will actually instantly create a resource group for us. So you can check if your resource group is successfully created using this provisioning state. So it is succeeded. That means our Azure resource group is now successfully created on our Azure portal. You can actually check it. You can navigate to Azure portal. Here just go to the tab called resource group. Under the resource group you will see your newly created resource groups. Here you can see Azure Cloud Streak, right? So here you can see this location is Southeast Asia, right? So now we actually create our resource group without an issue. So then we can actually move to the next part, right? Okay. Then the second task that we need to do is we need to create a Azure Container Registry. Like I mentioned in our blog post as well. So here we need to first we need to build our application. We actually I actually implement our application before this session, so we don't need to worry about that. So the second task that we need to do is we need to create a Azure Container Registry. So we need because at the end we need to push our containerized application to Azure Container Registry now. So in order to do that, we need to create an Azure Container Registry, right? So how we actually create Azure Container Registry? So it actually a simple command like this. Let me explain this command for you. So basically in previous, here you can see we create Azure resource group, right? So in this time what we are going to do is we are going to create Azure Container Registry. Here you can see ACR is stands for Azure Container Registry. So we need to give a name to our Azure Container Registry. In this case I just name it ACS ACR demo, which is stand for Azure Cloud Streak Azure Container Registry demo. So you can basically give whatever name that you want. It's not a problem. So this G is stand for, we need to this G tag is actually stand for resource group. So we need to specify what is the resource group that we are going to create this Azure container registry. So here you can specify what resource group that you want to use. Right here you can see we are going to use Azure Cloud Streak resource group. So that's why I specify Azure Cloud Streak resource group in here. So then we need to have a location to deploy our Azure Container Registry. So for that case also I use the same location, Southeast Asia. So you can use about available regions on Azure, so that's not a problem. So this SKU basically it's a stand for the pricing tier of your Azure container registry. So there are multiple pricing tiers. So I actually in my blog post I put a link so that you can actually visit that document and see what are the available pricing tiers for Azure Container Registry. So in this demo, I just used the basic pricing tier. So basic pricing tier is more than enough for this demo. So I just hit enter, and it will start creating the Azure container registry. Here you can see it is running. So this will take some time depending on your internet connection and other stuff. So now here you can see my Azure resource group is now created. It actually take a couple of seconds. So here you can go to you can refer this output, terminal output. Basically this is a like JSON output, basically key value outputs. Here you can see, just go through and check whether the provisioning state is on succeeded. So if the provisioning state is succeeded, which means your Azure Container Registry is deployed successfully under a resource group called Azure Cloud Streak. Okay, so you can actually check that one also. So I just move to the resource groups. So under the resource groups, we will have our Azure Cloud Streak resource group. I just refresh it here. So if you refresh it, our newly created Azure resource group, Azure container registry, will be visible for you. So here you can see, I will zoom a little bit so that you can see it clearly. So here you can see ACS ACR demo, which is the uh, name that we given in here. So here you can see the location is Southeast Asia. It is a type of container registry. So now we actually successfully create our Azure resource group as well as our Azure container registry. So then we can move on to containerize our Node.js application, right? So because we actually done with the creating Azure container registry. So after we containerize our Docker image, we can push it to the Azure container registry, right? So we can actually clear the terminal for now. So I'll move to the project. So basically first I will run this project so that you can actually see what application that we're going to deploy to Azure Kubernetes service. So I just run npm run start. So it will start the application, our Node.js application. Here you can see. So here you can see it is running on port 8045. If I go to my browser and just give localhost colon the port number 8045, it should display our application. So here you can see this is the Node.js application that we're going to deploy to our Azure Kubernetes service, right? Okay, now we know our application is working fine, so we can actually containerize this application, right? Okay, so I just clear the terminal. So then we can move forward. So to containerize this application, we need to have a special file called Docker file. So like I mentioned in our blog post as well, in this diagram as well, we need to have a file called Docker file in order to containerize our application, right? So now we are going to create the Docker file. So I just create a new file called Docker file here. So here you can see it has been created Docker file. So it actually the Docker file doesn't have any extensions, right? It's you need to give the name exactly same like this. So then we need to have some commands, we need to give some commands to our Docker file, right? I just copy paste the command that I'm going to write here. So then I'll explain it one by one, right? Okay. Then here you can see we have in our first line a command called from, and then we specify something, but we still don't know what is it. So here what happens in here, like it basically tell Docker to pull a Docker image called node with the tag of 14.17, right? So you may be wondering, where is this node 14.17 is come, right? So if you like go to hub.docker.com, right, it's a place to store, it's another place to store containerized application similar to Azure Container Registry. So it's like a GitHub for containers images, right? If you navigate to that hub.docker.com and just search node, then here you can see a image, official image, Node.js official image is in here. If I click on this one, right, so it will it will display all the information about that Docker image, right? Here you can see these are the available tags. So in these tags, if you search through it, so here you can see a version called 14.17. so this is the image tag that we're going to use in our uh, container application. So this is where actually this Docker image, uh, Node.js Docker image actually pull to our container application. So that's why we specify from Node 14.17, so that it will pull that Node image that having tag 14.17 to our container application. So then after we pull that image from the Docker Hub, then we need to create a working directory called work.dir. So this working directory means like you are creating a folder inside the container, right? We are going to create a container now. Inside that container, after we pull the Node.js from the Docker Hub, we need to create a working directory. We need to create a folder. So this for this folder, I just name it as /app, right? So you can basically give whatever the name that you want. It's not a problem. This is here the thing that I'm highlighting is not a keyword. It's just a word. So you can actually give whatever the name that you want. So here just use /app. So after we creating the working directory, what we need to do is we need to tell Docker to copy our entire source code from the local machine and paste it inside that create working directory. So what is our working directory name? /app, right? So basically we tell Docker to copy this entire source code from our application to a folder called app that is inside the container, right? So then we actually copy paste the source code as well, and we also get the Node.js image, right, with having tag 14.17. So then we need to run npm install in order to install all the dependencies that needed for our Node.js application to run. So in normally in our normal local computers, we just run npm install, then it will install all the dependencies that is needed to run. So like similar to that, we need to run exact same command, but not in local machine. We need to run it inside our container. So that's why we need to give a command called run to run this npm install, right? So after that we need to like at this point we actually create our application, like, and we actually install all the dependencies that it wants. So then we need to start our application. So to start it, we need to have an entry point. So with this entry point, basically it will actually start our application, right? So then it will specify, like here you can see I just go through the command on my terminal. You can see I just run npm run start in order to start this application. So similar to that, we need to run that exact same command inside the container in order to run our application, right? So here you can see I just name npm run entry point as npm run, and the command is start. So npm run start, then only this our node.js docker container start running the application, right? So this is basically it in the docker image. So this is a really simple, like basic docker file. So depending on the application, this may be vary, like for the java application, the docker file is different from this one, right? Okay. But the syntax, like the keywords, most of the time will be same. So these things like npm install, this will be changed from one project to another. So now we create a docker file. So now we need to build like container, like we need to build a container that having our node.js application. So how we actually build node.js container, node.js image. So it actually really simple. So let me go to the terminal again. So because we are done with the docker file, we don't need to touch anymore. So then we need to we need to create a docker image, right? To create a docker image, to build a docker image, we need to have a run a command. So the command is this. So we tell docker to create an image build, and with having tag this. So when you going to give a tag, when you basically not a tag, basically when you going to give a name for your container image, you need to like really careful in here, because we at the end we are going to push this docker image to Azure Container Registry now. So we need to name it as like this. First you need to give the login server name, and then put a slash in here, and then only you can give the container image. So this section, the thing that I'm highlighting in here, is the most important part. So you need to give the Azure Container Registry login server name. So how you can find this Azure Container Registry login server name? So if you go inside to this Azure Container Registry, right, just click on it. So then here you can see the login server. The login server, here you can see this is the login server name, right? So you can just copy this name in from here, and you need to just paste it on here, right? Stick like this. So I actually do the same thing, actually create this command before, but after you create it, we need to give this Azure Container Registry login server name, and then put a slash, and then you can give you can name your application, name your image. So in here we are going to deploy a portfolio application. So that's why I give portfolio app and colon, put a colon, and we need to have a tag. So I hope you remember in Docker file also, here you can see this is after, like the things that after the colon is called tag, right? The tag actually specify like most of the time the version of the Docker file, right? So basically in here also we create a tag called v1, which stands for version 1. So if you don't put a tag, if you don't put a colon in here, the basically the Docker, it will automatically attach a tag called latest. So if you don't given any tag, if you don't given any tag in here, so but in this case we actually create a tag called v1. So then that's that. Then we actually specify the name correctly. So at the layer at the last, we need to give the absolute path to our Docker file. So because this command need to find that Docker file in order to run these commands, right? In order to run these commands, these commands need to find that Docker file. So we need to, as the second parameter, we need to give the absolute path to that Docker file. So if your Docker file is in the same directory, is same project directory, you can give a full stop right here. If it is in a different location, you need to give the absolute path. But most of the time, we actually save the Docker file inside the same project structure, right? Okay. I hope now you got this. What is this command? So we can now run it, right? Just hit enter. Then it will actually start building the Docker image, which actually contains our Node.js application, right? So after this is running, I'll explain what happens, right? So let just wait for to it is to begin. Okay, here you can see now it is successfully build our Docker image. So basically here you can see for as the there are 4 tasks, right? Here you can see in the Docker file it has 4 tasks to run, or not start the application, just to build that image. It need to complete 4 tasks, right? As the first task, what it does is it actually pull the Node.js Node.js image that having tag 14.17 from the Docker Hub, and then as the second task, it create a working directory called app. Here you can see these are the things that we actually specify mention in that Docker file. The Docker file the Docker actually create the Docker image based on the information that we actually given inside the Docker file, right? So as the third task, it will copy our entire source code from our local computer to that working directory inside our container. So then it will run npm install, right? So if you after we create our Docker image, if you run a command like docker images, you will be able to see the newly created image, like newly created Docker image. So this is actually our container. This is actually our Node.js application. So here you can see this the tag is version 1 v1, and each and every Docker image have a unique image ID. It will actually assigned by the Docker. So then here you can see create a minute ago, then the size of our Docker image. So here you can see it's nearly nearly 1 GB. We actually successfully create our Docker image, right? So if you run Docker images, here you can see this is our Docker image, right? So now the next task is to push this Docker image to Azure Container Registry. But before doing that, we need to we need to check whether this application is working or not, because now our application inside the container, so we need to check whether our application is running without any issue. So how you can run a Docker image? So it actually really simple. We need to give a command like docker run. We actually run our application on detach mode. So then we need to give a port. We need to have a port mapping between our Docker image with our local computer, because now our application not inside our local computer but inside a container. So inside the container, it has the application port which is our application is start on. So our application starts on port 8045. So we need to map that port 8045 with the another port that can be accessed on our local computer, right? Because if we don't map that port, we cannot access our application that is inside our container, right? So how you can map it? So after the -p tag, you need to give the port that you want to access on the browser. So in this case, I just give 3000. So we need to map this 3000 port 3000 with our container port. So what is our container port? So our container port is 8045, right? Just map it 8045, right? After that, we need to give the Docker image name. I just give copy paste this one in here and give the tag name version 1. Then after that, you can hit enter, then it will start our container application. So it will actually give some random characters in here. So then if you go to your browser and just open a new tab, I just give localhost colon 3000, port 3000. So it should load our application. So here you can see localhost 3000. But you can, I hope you notice like our port, our Node.js application start on port 8045, but how it is running on port 3000. So that's because we actually map those ports, right? Our like container port is 8045 and we map that 8045 port with port local port called 3000, so that we can actually access our application through our local computer. Okay, so if you run if you like give a command like docker, like just give me docker ps, you can actually see the containers that are running. Here you can see our container id is here. What is the name of our image? The command is npm run start, which is the command that we actually gave in here. So that is also there a minute ago. So this is how our application talk to the container application, right? This is how our computer talk with our containerized application through the port 3000. It will call the port 8045, so which is our Node.js application. So we need to stop this containers because now we know it is working fine. Just give docker stop, give paste it the container id, so then it will stop the docker container, right? If I just put docker ps, here you can see nothing is there, but our docker image is still there, right? If you run docker, right, docker images, here you can see our images is still there. So now it's just a matter of push this docker image to the docker, like to Azure Container Registry. So before we push our container image to Azure Container Registry, we need to log in to Azure Container Registry. To do that, you need to give this command. So I just paste it in here. So yeah, I'll just clear the terminal up. Okay, so we tell docker to login to a username call, like server call acs acr demo dot azure.cr.io. So I hope you remember this name, because this is our login server name. I hope you remember. So this is our login server name. So basically we tell docker to log into this login server, right? If you just hit enter, right, so it will authenticate our Azure Container Registry. So it will basically ask you to enter your username. So how you can give your username? Like basically we actually don't give any username before now. So but if you create Azure Container Registry, the username and password is already created for you. So you can actually you can actually get your username and password when you navigate to the Azure, like your container registry, and then you need to navigate to access key, like tab called access keys in here, right? And then you need to enable, like if you didn't even see, like doesn't even see username and password, you need to enable the admin user option, right? So there, then you will able to see what is your username and what is your password, right? So I just copy this username right here and just paste it on my terminal, and then it will ask a password. So then I just copy one of those password and then just paste it, just hit enter. So then it will basically authenticate our account with the Azure Container Registry. If our authentication successful, it will like display a message like login succeeded. So now we successfully log into the Azure Container Registry. Now we can actually push our Docker image to Azure Container Registry. So I just clear the terminal, and how you can push your Docker image to Azure Container Registry with using this command, like Docker image push ACS acrdemo.azurec.io/portfolio app v1. I hope you remember this name, because this is our Docker image name. So then I just hit enter. So then it will start pushing our code to Azure Container Registry. So depending on your internet connection, this will actually take some time. So because in my case, actually this Docker image is actually 940 megabytes, something. I hope that I remember that's the amount. So this will actually take some time. So we need to wait until it's done. So after it successfully pushed to Azure Container Registry, like we can continue with the rest of the things. Let's just wait until it's completed. Okay, now our Docker image actually successfully pushed to Azure Container Registry. So if you go and check it out, so if you go to our Azure Container Registry, ACS ACR demo, and under that Azure Container Registry, you have a tab called repositories. So just click on it, right? And there you can now see our application, our containerized image. So this is what we call our container image, like portfolio app. So then if we click on this one, this is a tag v1 that actually we specify when we actually build this Docker image, right? So now we actually successfully build and push our Docker image to the Azure Container Registry. So now we actually successfully done it. So up to now, what we actually done is we build the image, right? We create Azure resource group. We create Azure Container Registry inside that resource group, and then we build our Docker image, and then we push that Docker image to Azure Container Registry. So now this section is now successfully done, right? So okay, now we can move on to the next part, which is creating the Azure Kubernetes Service, right? So how we can do that? So I'll just clear the terminal. So now we are going to create the Azure Kubernetes Service. So I just copy paste like I just copy some command in here. This is actually a lengthy command, so let me explain one by one. So similar to creating Azure Container Registry, we tell Azure to create a Azure Kubernetes Service. This AKS stand for Azure Kubernetes Service. We actually tell Azure to create it, right? Then we need to specify the resource group name. So in this case, our resource group name is Azure Cloud Streak, right? And then we need to specify, we need to give a name to our Azure Kubernetes service, right? So then we can actually give whatever the name that we want. So in here, in this case, I just give AKS cluster. So you can actually give whatever name. So then we need to give how many worker nodes that we need to that we need to create. So this worker node is similar to a server. This actually, the worker node actually contain the pod. And here you can see this our worker node actually contain this pod inside that node, and it will basically give all the resources that need to run our pod, right? As I said earlier, our pod actually contains our containerized application, right? Okay. So then we in this demo, I just create three pods, like three worker nodes, not three pods. So then we need to give a tag called generate SSH keys. So basically what this does is like it will automatically generate the SSH keys for us. We don't need to manually go to the Azure portal and generate it from there. By running this command, this will automatically generate the SSH keys. So we need to give what is the size of this each worker node. So to do that, we need to have a tag called node VM size. So in my blog post, I actually mentioned like what are the available like Kubernetes service worker node sizes. So it's like let me go to that section and right, I think it's on here, like, yeah, here if you go to my blog post, in there I actually mention what is this worker node, like what is this tag stand for. So it is for pricing tier for the AKS cluster, Azure Kubernetes cluster. So you can actually use this like click on this documentation to get more information about that pricing tiers for Azure Kubernetes cluster, right? Okay, I just used standard B2S, right? That is more than enough for this demo. And lastly, so this is our most important command, right? Out of the out of these command, this is the most important one. So this is where we actually link our container registry, our Azure container registry, which actually contains our Dockerized like containerized application or JS application. This is where we actually link our container registry with our Kubernetes cluster, right? So we actually tell attach ACR, which means attach Azure Container Registry. We need to specify what is the name of that Azure Container Registry. So if you go to the Azure portal, so this is our Azure Container Registry, ACS ACR demo. So here you can see, I just give the exact same name, ACS ACR demo, right? So now we actually specify all the things that we need to run in this command. So then you can hit enter to run this command. After successfully run this command, it will actually create a Azure Kubernetes service inside our resource group called Azure Cloud Streak. Just hit enter. So here you can see it actually start like creating the Azure Kubernetes service. It will actually take some time, so we need to actually wait until it's done. So after it successfully create the Azure Kubernetes service, we can proceed with the rest of the things, right? Okay, so just wait until it's done. So now our command is successfully run. So if you just search the provision so the provincial state, just go through this, like it's a large JSON output. Like here you can see the provisioning stage is succeeded, which means it actually successfully create or and deploy our Azure cluster, right? Azure Kubernetes service. So if I go back to the resource groups tab right here, so under our Azure Cloud Streak resource group, and here you should be able to see our newly created cluster, AKS cluster. So here you can see that's the name that we gave to our like Kubernetes cluster. Here you can see AKS cluster, right? It is actually inside our resource group called Azure Cloud Streak. So now we actually successfully created and deployed our Azure Kubernetes service, right? Now it is on there. So like let's click on this one, right? So if you go inside this Azure Kubernetes cluster, so in our command you can see we actually create two worker nodes, right? So we actually create two worker nodes. So here you can see a tab called node pools, right? Just click on it, right? So then here you can see node pool 1, it is running. The operating system is Linux. Here you can see the virtual machine size, the standard B2S, that which is the name that we actually which is the pricing tier that we actually specify on our command. Right, then here if you click on that one, you will have another tab called nodes. So just click on this one. So here you can see our worker nodes, right? Here you can see our worker nodes. So we actually create two worker nodes, so that's why it will actually display two worker nodes in here, right? Okay, now we actually successfully create and deploy our Kubernetes cluster. Now things actually getting really simple. So let's move forward. So now we need to verify that our Kubernetes service is successfully deployed or not, right? To like verify that one, we need to have run another command. So this command basically like it will actually tell get the credentials for this Azure Kubernetes service inside this resource group like Azure Cloud Streak. The name is Azure, AKS cluster, which is our Kubernetes service name, cluster name. So if I just run this command here, so here you can see it will actually like get the necessary information. Basically it will verify it's there because if it is not there it will most probably throw an error, right? So now we know our Azure Kubernetes service, our Kubernetes cluster is successfully deployed. So now we need to get the information of our information inside our Azure Kubernetes cluster. So I just clear the terminal. Here I'm just write. I'm going to use the Kubernetes command line tool. Like I said earlier, kubectl kubectl. So in here I just give name kubectl kubectl and get nodes. So this command should give the two nodes that we actually created inside our AKS cluster. So here they are. So here you can see AKS, the name AKS node pool 1, blah blah blah, AKS node pool 1, blah blah blah. They actually ready to run any application. So if you just check whether these are the node names are exactly the same here like this, right? So now we know our application is now running, our worker nodes are ready to provide their service. So now we need to deploy our application, right? So to deploy our application, we need to configure a file. We need to create a deployment file. So we are going to create it now. So I'm just going to create a new file called deployment file dot YAML. So this is a YAML file. So I just hit enter and I just paste a command set like the file command set like this. I'll explain this what is this content, what this file contains, right? So basically this file contains two parts. So let me move back to the go back to the our blog post. So in our blog post here you can see according to our use case diagram. Here you can see we actually we actually use two resources. One is called Azure Kubernetes like cluster, and one is load balancer, which is a service, right? So we need to run we need to actually create both the resources inside our Azure Kubernetes cluster. So then what we need to do is like basically we create two types. So here actually you can here you can see in YAML files instead of writing two separate files, we can actually have multiple contents inside the same file. We only need to give this operator right here, 3 dashes. So it will basically like create a new file inside the same file. So here as the first file, we are going to create the deployment, and in the second file, we are going to deploy the service, right? So here you can see the kind is deployment. It's a deployment kind because in this is the place we actually deploy our Dockerized application to our Kubernetes cluster. So that's why it's a kind deployment, and we inside our metadata tag we can actually give a name for our deployment. In here I just name it as portfolio deployment, and if we want we can actually name label it as portfolio. So then under this specification, we need to specify how many pods that we want to create inside a one node. So we actually create two nodes now. So we need to specify how many pods that we need to create inside a one node. So I just change it to three nodes, right? Three pods. Basically, it will create copies of the three copies of a same container application. Three pods, right? Three. It will basically create a three pods inside our node. So then we need to in the selector it's actually match the label in here you can see the label. So then inside this template one we have another specification which specify the which container that we need to deploy. So inside this containers tab we have a name called portfolio, right? We can have a name called portfolio, and then we need to pull that image. So remember in when I show this diagram to you, when we deploy our Kubernetes cluster, when we deploy our Kubernetes deployment file, this YAML file to the Kubernetes cluster, it will basically create a deployment, right? Inside that deployment it will create the pods, right? When we create the pods, when the Kubernetes cluster create the pods, then it will pull the Docker image from the Azure Container Registry. So then we need to actually specify where is our Azure Container Registry, where is our Docker image, right? So that's why we actually give the name like this. So then it will go to our Azure Container Registry and pull the Docker image. So let me move to this one. So let me go to the Azure, like here, Container Registry. So here you can see our login server name, our Docker image. So let me paste and give it in here, right? So this is the place that we actually store our Docker image, right? Okay, so then we need to specify what is the container port. So when I run our Docker container inside our local computer, I mention in that scenario, our container port is the one that our application actually runs. So our container port is 8045. So we need to specify that container port right here, right? So then that's the deployment file. So is after this deployment file, this service file is also deployed to the Azure Kubernetes cluster. So here you can see this the kind is service. Here you can see in this case kind is a deployment. In here the kind is a service. Basically it's a service, not a deployment. So here you can give the inside the metadata you can give what is your service name to be. So then you can actually label it as portfolios. So this is the most important section. So this in the under our kind service we have a specification spec. So the type is the load balancer. So because we are going to create a load balancer to balance the load, balance the traffic between our worker nodes, right? We need to type load balancer. So then we need to select the app. So this is where the load balancer know. So what exactly what is the what is the thing that it need to balance the load. So each and every node that contains the app name called portfolio is getting load balanced by this service called load balancer. So here you can see that's why we actually name our application as portfolio. Then our load balancer service look each and every node that having a app called portfolio, then it will balance the load between those nodes, right? So then under that one we have pod. This is where we map our like container pod with the with the server pod side. Here you can see in when I do this when I run the container application inside my local computer, remember I just put what is the port that I need to access on my local computer, and after that I specify what is the container port. So here what is my container port is 8045. So it will actually target to this container port. So that's why we specify 8045. So this is basically it for the deployment file, right? So this deployment file actually again vary from one project to another. So this is actually a really simple deployment file. So now we need to actually apply this deployment YAML file to our Azure Kubernetes service. So how we can apply, like how we can actually apply it? So that's a problem, right? So it's actually really simple. You need to give a command like this. Yes. Yes. We tell kubectl. I hope you now know what is kubectl. It's a command line tool for Kubernetes. So we actually tell kubectl to apply a file called deployment file.yaml, right? So then we need to hit enter. Then it will apply this deployment YAML. Like basically it will like upload our file to the Kubernetes service. Then based on the information, based on the instructions that we specify in that deployment file.yaml, our Kubernetes service will configure. So I just hit enter in here. Here you can see the deployment and also the service is successfully created, right? So now it is successfully created. So if I specify, if I run a command like this, kubectl get pods, right? Get pods. It need to show 3 pods. So because in our YAML file we specify 3 pods to be created, right? So here you can see it actually container creating. It actually is still creating the container, right? If we just run that exact same command again, yeah, now it is running, right? So previously it is getting created, now it is running on our worker node. So now 90%, I guess 100% of our work is now done. So but how we can access this application? Because that's the thing, no? Because that's the end goal. We need to access this application from public internet, through public internet, right? So how we can actually do that? Like we need to get the service, because the service is the one that expose our application to the public internet. So we tell kubectl get service, right? So it will get the services. So here you can see the Kubernetes is one service. It's a cluster IP, and the one is our deployment. What is our deployment name? Portfolio load balancer service. One is load balancer service. It's a type is the load balancer. This is the cluster IP. This is a private IP address. If we copy paste this IP address and put it on the browser, it will not work because this is a private IP address. This cannot actually access through the public internet. So then how we can access our application? So that is where this external IP comes into picture. So then like if we do everything correct, if you put this, like if you copy paste this external IP on my browser, it should load our web application, node application. So this is the last part. Just copy this one on here and then go to the browser. Just like close this one, open a new tab, just paste our IP address on here, just hit enter, just wait. Here you can see our is our Node.js application, our containers application on running, two worker nodes, and each worker node have three pods get created. So this is how our application runs through a Node.js through a Kubernetes cluster. So now it is accessible through the public internet, right? Okay, now our like goal is completed, right? So at the end we need to have we need to actually deploy an application. So now we deploy an application through Azure Kubernetes Service, right? So here you can see at the end you need to have load this application on your local computer. So if you want to give this like IP address to someone else to run it on their browser, you can actually give it. So if you want to add a domain name, you can actually buy a domain and assign it to this IP address. So then you can actually use the entire application as a normal website, right? So yeah, so our application is successfully running. Here you can see everything is working fine. Right. So now we actually accomplish our goal today, right? So let me recap what we actually done today. So basically, as the first task, we actually learned what is Azure Kubernetes Service and Azure Container Registry, right? And then mm, we actually like or get an overall idea about the use case, and we after that we create Azure Container Registry, and after that we build our like Docker image and push it to the Azure Container Registry, and after that we create and deploy the Kubernetes cluster on our Azure resource group. So then after that we finally deploy our containerized Node.js application to the Azure Kubernetes cluster. So yeah, that's it for this session. I hope you learned something new today. So like if I miss anything, or if I like do something wrong, just let me know. Yeah, so yeah, actually really thank you all for all the attendees and all the uh, organization committee to organize the event like this. So yeah, thank you for all. That's it from my end. Thank you. Have a nice day. Over to you, Nudhij.
Thank you, Rusiru, for this very informative session. I'd like to remind you all that all active participants of the session would receive valuable certificates issued by the MS Club of SLIIT. The link is already shared in the chat, so fill it out to get a valuable certificate. Since we are at the end of the session, let's move into vote of thanks. Thank you, Mr. Kamar Ratnayaka and Rusiru for both of your valuable time and effort. I know that I speak for all the participants when I say this, that in today's session, we learned a lot and we had fun learning as well. We all wish both of you all the very best in your future endeavors. Thank you again. And next, I'd like to thank all who supported in organizing this event and making this event a success. Finally, I would like to thank all the participants who took time out of their busy schedule to take part in this event. Tune in to MS Club of SLIIT YouTube channel and our social media pages for upcoming events. Stay safe and have a good day.